everybody, this is John for MTG Nexus coming at you with another budget modern deck. So, full disclosure, some of the other decks that we've been doing were by Foz, one of our regular contributors to the channel. Front decks he wanted his friend to take a look at as far as getting into the modern format on somewhat of a budget. And there were a couple decks, and I still think there's a couple decks that I haven't quite done of his list. But there was a user on Reddit known as Servo Token who has taken a ton of decks, which I'll try to include the link down below so I'm not taking credit for what he or she did. They did a bunch of budget decks, like $100, $120, and like they have, I don't know, basically everything in some form of budget. There's Dredge and Bogle, Soul Sisters, Elves, this Eminent Domain deck we're looking at, Blue Tron, Merfolk, Death Shadow, Red Storm, Hate Bears, Wilderness Reclamation, Electro Dominance, Affinity, Zoo, Thopter Sword, Allies, Prowess, Infect, 8-Rack, Green Tron, Zombie Rally, 8-Ball, Soul Herder, Inverter, Ponza, Soldiers, Spirits, Transmogrify, Heartless Eldrazi, Abdan Reanimator, Pure Steel Hammer, 8-Whack, Primal Devotion, Mill, Delirium, and the list goes even further. So, this is an Eminent Domain deck. Now this, I believe the origination of this idea was from a Saffron Olive list back in the day. And the deck leverages things like Annex and Dreamleash to steal your opponent's permanents, particularly lands, allowing you to ramp in addition to using... one of the new things to this version is, in addition to Izzet Signets, you have the Talismans of Creativity, which were printed, I believe, in the original Modern Horizons, and then Maze Mind Tome, a new edition from M21, I believe? M21. And then, basically, you're playing a bunch of stuff to just kind of disrupt what your opponent's doing until such point in time you can cast Wildfire, destroy a bunch of lands for both players, but you don't care because you've stolen some of your opponent's lands, bounce them, and then you use, whatever other win condition you have at the moment, whether it's Field the Dead tokens, whether it's the Izzet Viceroy, whether it's Frost Titan, whether it's Sphinx of the Final Word. And you can cast these obnoxiously expensive threats because, you're ramping with your signets and your talismans, you're stealing your opponent's lands. Beyond that, you have a little bit of disruption elements in the form of things like Lightning Bolt, Remand, Boomerang, which we'll get to in a second, and Anger of the Gods to kind of keep the aggro decks at bay until you can Wildfire your opponent. Ral, kind of alternative win con, much like some of the Restore Balance decks that used to use Planeswalkers to win when they were more of a cascade thing as opposed to the versions that they are now. Boomerang supplements your land stealing plan by returning lands to your opponent's thing. Basically, it makes things more difficult for your opponent to leverage their mana, buys you enough time to just kind of go nuts with Wildfire. Beyond that, they did get a small Field of the Dead theme. I think there might be too many basic islands in Mountains for this to be a consistent theme, but, there are various different lands. You have Shivan Reefs and Snow-Covered Lands and Sulphur Falls and Swiftwater Cliffs and Temples and Wandering Fumaroles. Now, keeping in mind, when you're doing budgets, one of the things is fetch lands are basically a no-go, and even shock lands can be difficult. So, that's kind of the main deck, what it's trying to do. Sideboard is an eclectic mix of cards. Narset, obviously, pretty good against a lot of cantripping decks, control decks, etc. Ashiok Dreamrender, I think, is going to end up being an MVP in some matchups, just kind of milling your opponent out, making things difficult for them in certain regards. Negate, and Miscast come in against controlling decks and combo decks. Miscast is an interesting one. It's kind of like Spell Pierce, but targets only sorceries and instants, and it's actually a little bit more mana efficient in that regard. Shattering Spree and Braid deal with problematic artifacts. Fry comes in against problematic things like Teferi and such. Pyroclasms when you need a little bit more play against the aggressive decks. And then 2 Dragon's Claw when you're going up against Burn and Prowess. So, very interesting list. I wanted to highlight this one in particular first because I think it's one of the most interesting ones to me. It's a control deck that also is kind of a land stealing deck, so I'm sure there will be some salty opponents. But that said, let's get into a couple matches. Here for match number 1. Don't know if this hand really does enough. Because we have the Talisman we're going to keep, but Wildfire could be good enough if our opponent is sufficiently handicapped by their start here. Sure, so some type of Elves deck. So really want to find an Anger of the Gods or something. One of our bolts to slow them down a little bit. Sure. Elves, elves. Elves are all you need. Okay. We have a collected company here. I guess Archdruid would be pretty bad too. Yep, that's a pretty good 5. I don't know that we're going to survive long enough to cast this Wildfire, but yep. So if we don't hit an Anger of the Gods, we're just dead this turn. Alright. So we definitely want the Pyroclasms. Fry does not hit the things we're looking for, correct? So it looks like it's just a Braid and Pyroclasms. And then can probably go down some amount of the land stealing. So much of their stuff is creature based. It's possible I'm supposed to like board out some amount of the remands. They're not particularly good. But they at least so I'd love to play first. This hand's a keep. Opponent is certainly mulliganing aggressively to good hands. Sure. So could could do a number of things here. Could play some of the tap lands. Could like abrade this, but I think I really just want them to develop their board and play into a Pyroclasm here. Sure. Sure. Bounce their land. They need a way to close out the game. Well, Anger of the Gods probably counts as a way to close out the game. Alright. Field the Dead might be a decent way to close out the game, potentially. Remand. Continuing to cycle through our deck. Alright, Row's pretty good here. This is enough to get the scoop. Getting close to triggering field here. Go ahead and kill their Elvish Mystic. I don't know if this deck is good, but it seems like a blast to play. Sure. Bolt the Archdruid. Alright. Opponent concedes. Huh. Okay. This hand just doesn't do anything. This hand has no lands. This hand's fine. Put back. The Signet. And Braid, I guess. Just hope Anger of the Gods is good enough. It's possible there I'm supposed to put back one of the lands instead. Alright, looking for a bolt, something. I think we can safely put that on the bottom. Okay. Yep, I get to go nuts here. Definitely should have kept the upgrade. Hopefully we don't die this turn. Turn 3 kills are certainly possible. Yep. Do you have Uzuri to pair with all this? Collected Company? Anything? Sure. I did? It's a lot of damage. Anger of the Gods. Four, 5. Okay. So I think one of the weaknesses of this particular build is its susceptibility to Shaman of the Pack would be Beast Within their own land. Sure. Susceptibility to something like I think I am in the market for a lightning bolt. this is probably the time you want to concede. But, you know, it's up to you, friend. Tap that down. See if they block with the elf. Choose not to. Bolt the elf. Pass turn. Nice. Here for a second match with this deck. I still like to play first. Wildfire and stuff. Don't think turn 5 wildfire is good enough in this format, so. Okay. Keep this hand. Back a wildfire for now. All right. Land would be great. Get to hold up bolt here, which I don't know if it'll be completely relevant, but sure. Boseiju, huh? All right. Control that. Would be the Eminenet domain part of the deck. Unfortunately, the only win con we currently have is Lightning Bolt, but curious what our opponent's playing. Sure. Feel the Dead would be nice. Talisman, I don't think was particularly what we were looking for here, but, you know, c'est la vie. the clock. Cuts down our opponent's ability to use Boseiju. Sure. Hopefully they don't have Fatal Push here. If they do, they do. Ah, they're a mill deck. Gotcha. Well, a version of a mill deck. Interesting. What do we have for this kind of matchup? At this point, we're going to go ahead and scoop here. Really don't have a whole lot of good ways to deal with something like Ashiok. Fry's okay. Negate might be alright. Narset seems decent. Murders can probably go out. Do we want to bring in our own Ashioks? Doesn't seem like they have search effects in their deck, so probably not. And beyond that, doesn't seem like Remand's going to be all that great here. First, it's all right. Not fantastic, but it's all right. Go. Serum Visions, sure. Nice. Actually, that was extremely dumb to play that one, or to put that one to the top. Hopefully they tap out for something not named Ashiok. Doesn't look like we'll get that lucky, though. Counterspell. I'm presuming this will lure it out. Next turn we can play Sphinx of the Final Word. Can't be countered, hexproof, blah blah blah. Next turn we wildfire if they don't damnation here. Presumably just mill us here or whatever. Okay. Sure. So, wildfire. Alright. Sphinx of the final word. So we hit our lander up and we'll have to activate Maze Mind Tome to end step here. Sure. Fry your sorry butt. Seems like a pretty good insurance policy to have. Looking for a land drop. Land drop. No such luck, but we do have negate here, which is nice. Sure. Alright, and our opponent scoops. Okie dokie. Guess we do want the Romans back in on the draw. Curious, like, what other... This feels like Planeswalkers are kind of a weak point for this deck, honestly. Shiva Nurset on the draw. Shiva Wildfire, go like that. Alright, hand seems okay. Like, bolts aren't, like, fantastic, but they at least somewhat interact with what our opponent's doing. Why would they... Yeah, whatever. I'm going to counter one. I'd rather have them counter this, or they're just going to Perilous Journey it back, or whatever that card was. Perilous Voyage. Sure. Ashiok, one of them, I'm guessing. Nope, nothing. Okay. Sure. Sure. Yep. Fully expect this to get ghost quartered, but it didn't ghost quarter. Interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go through the turn. Why wouldn't you activate Field of Ruin? Yeah, why didn't you do that while things and stuff were going on? Damnation? Sure. All right. Sure. They're going to have a really hard time winning with both of our Rals exiled. It's something that can win. I just don't know, like, if we're going to be able to resolve it around counter spells. Sure. If we get mana leaked, we get mana leaked. There's not a whole lot I can do about it. Of course, their last card in hand is a mana leak. Why wouldn't that be, right? Don't know if we're going to be able to burn them out from here. Willis? Sure. And a lightning bolt, unfortunately. Yep. Still have one more copy of Titan, I think. Let's go and see it here. We're back for hopefully the final match with Eminent Domain. So do we take a gamble that Anger of the Gods is good in this hand? Sure. Anger of the Gods is good, or we hit a second blue source, Boomerang could buy us the sufficient time. if this is going to get... Like, considering force of negationing this... Okay, so they are a force of negation deck. Codal I don't particularly care about here. So, ninjas. Okay. One, two, three, four, five. Interesting. Curious what all their disruption suite is. Ay. Tapping with those talismans is so annoying. Yep, there goes wildfire. Yeah. You're already done past blocks. Mendelian click. Womp womp. Go ninja, go ninja, go! Ninjutsu. Nope. Just... kind of annoying, but not unsurprising. You're on a 2-turn clock. No, actually, 5. What we just did? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Too many mana rocks. Sure. Womp, womp, womp. Alright, so ninjas. Fry and Abrade both seem like interesting cards. Feels like Anger might be a little overkill for what they've got going on. Like they're kind of a comp. We want miscast here. Like one wildfire. Not really a Narset matchup because they're not a true control deck, and they don't seem to have a ton of cantrips. That just doesn't do anything. Sand's kind of the opposite. We have too many big bombs. Sand is at least interesting. Back Dream Leash and Sphinx for now. I mean, if we get hit by Spell Pierce, we get hit by Spell Pierce. There's not a whole lot I can do about it. Yep. In some ways, we are kind of a ramp deck, so it's like... You know, we do have the ramp deck problems, although we do have some small control elements. We are very much a ramp deck of sorts. Alright. Not going to pass into that much open mana. Disappointed that they don't have like a Triumph or something though. Boom. Not particularly what we wanted there. Sure. feel like you take maze on time here, right? Just auto pass through the turn, yay. I think we're in some trouble, team. Bing. Hopefully it doesn't hit the big ones. Fry and Sulphur Falls, kind of whatever. Okay. Okay. Another ephemeral. So they can activate. One, two, I guess we go for it. Okay. Okay. Daylight coming, we pass the turn. Sure. So I wish I could draw both of those, but alas I can't. So pass the turn. No reason to activate Maze Mind Tome right now. There's really nothing we can cast that we care about. Decent chance they have force of negation here, so we're just going to upkeep this. Really? Cool. Yeah, we're just we're just dead here. Looks like our opponent's deck was a little bit more creature orientated than I want to give them credit for. Be back in a sec with the wrap. Alright, so we're back for a look at Eminent Domain here. Once again, all credit goes to Servo Token on Reddit. I'll be linking to his decks. But, yeah. I don't think the deck's great by any means, but the plan of what the deck's trying to execute at least is interesting. Things that I liked, things that I didn't like. Feels like there's a good mix of like interaction against creature decks like bolts, angers, pyroclasms, wildfires. It feels like you can set up, at least in the post-board games, to beat the creature-based decks. The counterspell-based decks, the mill deck was a little weird. Like, I think one of the weaknesses of this style of thing is a Resolved Planeswalker is a nightmare. I don't know, like, what all you can do about it. Like, Fry and stuff can go a certain thing. Pithing Needle effects can help. But, yeah, that's definitely a thing. And then control decks, like, this is very much, while it is a board control deck, it is almost akin to a ramp deck with its trying to ramp into from 2 to 4 play its annexes or its dream leashes, and all of its finishers, Sphinx of the Final Word, Frost Titans, Rowls, they're all very expensive cards. So you're kind of in this like weird cycle where you're playing 30 mana sources, so you can flood out, but you don't really have a ton of ways to mitigate it. I do think maybe even a fourth copy of Maze Mind Tome should find its way in the deck. That card felt amazing. The Signets were fine. They're part of the Wildfire strategy. The Enix and Dreamlash effects, they might be too clunky for the format. I'm not really sure. But, what the deck's trying to do is powerful and fun and definitely different. Hence why I kind of wanted to give this. As far as the Field of the Dead, I still think maybe there should be more snow-covered islands in place of the basic islands and such. But, it's really kind of hard to argue with Field of the Dead, especially when you're stealing your opponent's lands, being an alternative win con, so, But, yeah, definitely an interesting take on things. Don't know. Maybe, I don't know. These talismans are certainly a big part of the thing, but it makes me wonder if something like if you're going for a more powerful version, like a teamer build with Explorer effects or Utopia, the one that's all over the control deck places. May as well look at the stupid Euro decks. Growth Spiral makes me wonder if there's an Eminent Domain deck that's playable with a Growth Spiral effect. Because the mana rocks are great, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, blowing up, them getting shut down by Karn, the great creator, is certainly a consideration. And then your opponent blowing up your Signets in post-board games could be a concern. I don't know. It's definitely a deck with some interesting Explorer potential. I don't know that it's powerful enough for the current Modern format. I know when it was originally spoiled, it was interesting by Saffron Olive, but it's definitely an interesting take, and I have to give Servo Token credit for coming up with a relatively budget control deck. Though, like I said, it does have its shortcomings, but, there are other game plans it can execute that are very powerful. So, this has been John for MTG Nexus with a budget creation by Servo Token on Reddit.